Hey, welcome back to Podcast PD with Christina. Thank you all again for being on this journey with me. I have received so much positive feedback from you about things that you learned, things that you just hadn't thought of in a different way, and how you've applied some of your learning in your classroom. And so keep it up. It's really awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So, in episode one, we grounded ourselves in trauma and brain science. And in episode two, we talked about transitions and why they are neurologically hard. Today, we're going to get very practical. We are going to spend some time talking about what we might say and what we might choose to say a little differently when behavior starts to escalate. Because when a student is dysregulated, our words can either raise their temperature or lower it. And often, even more than the words themselves, it's our tone and our body language that can communicate safety or threat. And before we go any further, I also just want to say this. This happens to us too. We are carrying a lot. Many of us are navigating our own stress, our own trauma histories, our own chronic exhaustion, all while being expected to show up steady, ready, regulated, and effective every single day. This is not the type of job that you can just turn off. And as educators, administrators, and parents, we are always on. And I'll be honest, I often fall back into habits that aren't the most effective because sometimes they feel faster or easier or better in the moment. And that doesn't mean that I'm failing or anybody else is failing. It just means we're human and we don't have to be perfect to do this work well. We just need to be willing to try something different. And so, anytime that you are with me, you are safe, you are supported, you are professionals with education, experience, and most importantly, a deep commitment to our students. And so, these podcasts are just about refinement and perhaps a different lens to view things through, not judgment or things that I will say will work 100% of the time. These are just some new ideas or perhaps a different way of thinking about old ideas. So this episode is going to give you one simple framework to remember when things feel tense. And I call it the CALMS method. And that stands for calm your voice, align your body, limit your words, make one direction clear, and save consequences for later. And something that you can kind of put in your head, calm first, correct later. Now, let's talk about why this works and what our brain looks like under stress. So, when a student is escalating, the prefrontal cortex begins to go offline. That's the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, reasoning, language processing, problem solving, and flexible thinking. It's what helps us pause before we act. But when stress rises, the amygdala, or the brain's alarm system, takes over. And when the amygdala is in charge, the brain is not asking, what's the expectation? What's the rule? It's asking, am I safe? That's when cortisol increases, heart rate increases, and cognitive flexibility decreases. If the brain is in fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn, logic will not land. It can be helpful to picture this through what Dr. Dan Siegel calls the upstairs and downstairs brain. Imagine the brain like a house. The downstairs brain includes the brainstem and the amygdala. That's the part that's responsible for survival functions, regulating breathing, heart rate, sensory processing, and scanning for threat. Kind of like the downstairs of your house, kind of like the hub of the house. You have your kitchen, your living room, dining room, maybe an office. That's the place where all of the regular functions of the house happen. The downstairs brain is intact in birth, and it's reactive and fast. It is what allows us to survive. The upstairs brain is the prefrontal cortex. That's the thinking brain. It's responsible for logic, reasoning, problem solving, decision making, and most importantly here, managing our emotions. And here's something important. The upstairs brain is actually under construction throughout childhood and adolescence and is not fully developed until around age 25. So that means the very part of our brain we rely on for regulation is still developing in our students and is shaped by their experiences. When a child is calm, ready to learn, and socially engaged, the upstairs and downstairs brains are communicating well. The thinking brain is in charge. The child can think before acting. But when a child feels stressed, embarrassed, angry, or overwhelmed, communication between the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain weakens. The downstairs brain reacts before the upstairs brain can think and process what's going on. If the amygdala senses threat, even if it's a real threat or even just a perceived threat, it activates a fight, flight, freeze, or sometimes fawn response. Adrenaline increases. The body prepares for action. In that state, it is very hard to think clearly. It can feel scary and out of control for a child, and that is often what we are seeing during meltdowns or escalations. In those moments, it becomes our role as educators to help reestablish communication between the upstairs and downstairs brain. We're not trying to win an argument. We're not trying to determine who is right or who is wrong. We are simply trying to help a nervous system feel safe enough to think again. And that's why calms as a strategy matters. It's not just a behavior strategy, it's a brain-based response to stress. So let's walk through the calms step by step and connect it directly to brain science. The C in calms is calm your voice. Tone is processed faster than words. The amygdala scans pitch, pace, and intensity before it processes the actual language. So if your voice sharpens, speeds up, grows louder, the nervous system hears a threat, even if your words are neutral. So instead of, "Excuse me, you will sit down right now," try lowering your volume and slowing your pace. "I can see you're frustrated. Let's take a seat." Or, "You're not ready yet. I will give you 1 minute." When your voice lowers, you send a cue of safety. That cue begins to reduce the amygdala activation and allows the prefrontal cortex to slowly re-engage. You cannot out-logic an activated brain, but you can out-calm it. The A in calm stands for align your body. Your posture communicates power or partnership. Crossed arms, pointing, pacing, hovering over a seated student. Those signals increase perceived dominance. When a student already feels out of control, dominance increases fight response. So instead, lower your body down to eye level. Uncross your arms. Slow your gestures. And stand at an angle rather than directly squared off. That's the supported stance that we learn about through our CPI training. Slow movement signals safety. Fast and abrupt movements signal danger. The nervous system mirrors what it sees. So when your body is calm, theirs has a model to follow. The L in calm stands for limit your words. When stress rises, language processing decreases. Long explanations, lectures, or repeated directives overload working memory. So instead of, "We've talked about this, you know better, this is the 3rd time today, and now we're going to have to go home," try, "Let's reset this." Or just start with your name. Short, concrete, clear. One direction at a time. Limiting language reduces the cognitive load and increases the chance that the direction will actually land. During escalation, less is more. The M in calms stands for make one direction clear. An overwhelmed brain cannot process multiple steps. So instead of, pick up your pencil, turn to page 42, write your name at the top, get started. Try one simple direction. Open your book. Pause. Once that happens, give the next step. One direction at a time protects executive functioning and reduces overwhelm. Clarity reduces anxiety. Anxiety reduction supports regulation. And finally, the S. S stands for save the consequences for later. And this is the hardest one because when behavior escalates, our instinct is to correct immediately. If you don't stop, you're losing recess. That's disrespectful. I'm calling your mom. You're going to the office. Get out of my room. But the consequences delivered during dysregulation only activates the defense. It doesn't activate reflection. A dysregulated brain cannot learn from consequence. They can only react to it. Save correction for when breathing slows and posture softens. Then say, what happened from your perspective? Pause. Then ask, what could we try next time? Pause. We still need to complete the work. How can we do that now? Calm first, correct later. Timing is everything. A student doesn't need to be told repeatedly that they're going to get a consequence. They know that they're in trouble. Our first goal is to help them calm their nervous system. All right, so let's look at some scenarios and some things that you could say or do during these scenarios. So a student says to you, I'm not doing it. Leave me alone. An escalated response could be, you don't talk to me like that. If you don't get started on your work right now, you're losing recess. The brain impact. Public correction increases social threat. Threat increases cortisol. Cortisol suppresses the prefrontal cortex. The student shifts deeper into fight mode. Now you get louder refusal or escalation. When we apply the calms response, you calm your voice. I can see you're not ready yet. Align your body, lower yourself slightly, and slow your movements when talking to the student. Limit your words. We'll start together. Make one direction clear. Pick up your pencil. And when they do it, praise what they're doing. Great, you picked up your pencil. Now write your name. Awesome, you wrote your name. And if a consequence is necessary, save the consequence for later. After the child is regulated, then address the expectations. And notice what may have changed in that interaction. The goal is not to win the moment. The goal was to lower the threat. We lowered the threat from the student. We were able to de-escalate them quickly and move them on to their next assignment without a power struggle. Now, let's think about the student who is maybe shutting down in class. Student just frozen, they're staring at their paper. An escalated response might be, why aren't you working? I told you to get started 5 minutes ago. This increases shame, and shame activates the limbic system further. Using the calms response, calm voice. Approaching the student. I'm here. What do you need? Limit your words with them. And then give one direction. Just write your name. Circle the first problem. One at a time, praise when the student is doing the right thing. Hey, look at that. You already have your name on the paper. You already have your first problem done. Awesome. Keep it up. Freeze isn't laziness. It's oftentimes their brain is overloaded. And small actions re-engage executive functioning. So when you are able to have a small win with a child, you can highlight that win and move them forward rather than harping on what they didn't do. And finally, adult regulation. And here's the piece that we don't talk about enough. As educators, we are managing multiple things at one time. And if we are stressed and our students are stressed, that can create a chaotic environment. So keep in mind that as your heart rate increases, theirs will too. Nervous systems are contagious. Through something called neuroception, the brain is constantly scanning tone, posture, facial expression, pace, and proximity for cues of safety or danger. Students do not just hear your words, they read your body. If your breathing is shallow, your movements are sharp, your voice tightens, their downstairs brain registers that shift instantly. So before responding, take one slow breath. Extend the exhale. A longer exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the part of the nervous system responsible for calming and restoring balance. Even one intentional breath can lower your own cortisol levels and steady your tone. And that matters more than we realize sometimes. Your nervous system is the anchor in the room. When you slow down, you are lending your regulation to a student. Co-regulation always comes before self-regulation. Children learn how to calm themselves by first experiencing calm in relationships with a regulated adult. That doesn't mean that you won't feel frustrated. It doesn't mean that you won't have a stress response. It means noticing it, pausing, and choosing your next move more intentionally. Sometimes that looks like silently saying to yourself, this is a stress response, not a personal attack. Sometimes it means stepping back physically for a moment so you can steady your breath. And sometimes it might be taking a time out. Could be asking a colleague for coverage for a few minutes so you can reset, or even modeling with your students how you can use a calm down corner when you are becoming frustrated. We can't pour regulation from an empty cup. Supporting student regulation requires protecting our own. And when we practice calming ourselves first, we are modeling exactly the skill we want students to build. Students borrow your regulation before they build their own. Escalation equals threat plus power struggle. De-escalation equals safety plus structure. The calms method gives you a structure. Calm your voice, align your body, limit your words, make one direction clear, save consequences for later. Calm first, correct later. So let's connect this to something very real. Think about a morning where you're running late to work. You walk in the door already behind, and your administrator immediately starts asking questions about a recess incident. Your child was sick the night before too, so you were up most of the night. You still need to grab stacks for an upcoming youth sports event. Your phone's buzzing, and before you can even sit down, a student starts knocking things off their desk and tapping their pencil repeatedly. Notice your body in that moment. Your shoulders tighten, your jaw clenches, your breathing shortens, and your heart rate increases, and you are not thinking at your best. Now, imagine walking into a professional development session without an agenda. You don't know what's coming. You sit down, and suddenly everyone stops talking, looks at you, and immediately says, go ahead and start internalizing lesson 6. How does your body feel? Probably not calm, probably not collaborative, and probably not flexible. That's because your downstairs brain is activating or already activated in those situations. Even as adults with fully developed prefrontal cortexes, stress narrows our thinking. We become more reactive, less patient, less flexible, more likely to snap, not because we're unprofessional, but because we're human. Now, imagine being 6 years old or 8 with a prefrontal cortex that is still under construction, with fewer coping strategies, less sleep, with less power and control over your environment. When we frame behavior through that lens, it doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. And just like we struggle to regulate when we're feeling overwhelmed, students struggle to regulate when their nervous systems are overloaded. The difference is we have more life experience, more language, and more autonomy. So when a student starts tapping their pencil or knocking things over, and your body is already tight from the morning and the stresses that you've experienced, it makes sense that your tone might sharpen. That's your stress response. And that is why adult regulation matters so much. If we can notice our own activation, even for a second, and take one slow breath, we interrupt the cycle. We prevent two dysregulated nervous systems from escalating each other. Because escalation is rarely one nervous system, it's two. When we calm first, we lower the temperature in the room. When we align our body and limit our words, we protect our own executive functioning as much as the students. We're not robots. We are professionals carrying a lot. And sometimes our downstairs brain gets loud. The goal is not perfection, it's awareness. When we recognize our own stress response, we're able to better choose a response instead of react automatically. And that's powerful. De-escalation is not about being permissive. It's about being neurologically effective. You're not lowering expectations, you're increasing access. And when access increases, learning follows. Pick one part of comms this week. Maybe just calm your voice or limit your words. Small shifts can change the nervous system. And changed nervous systems change classrooms. We're building this together. I will see you in episode 4, and we will dive further into more brain science and how to regulate around kids that have experienced trauma and our own traumas. Thank you, guys.